Yes, greetings everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unity and Solidarity TV. I am your host. My name is Bakari Makeru, and of course, today is Sunday, May 17, 2026. Before we start our conversation today, I need you to do me a huge favor. I need you to hit the subscribe button right now, turn on the notification bell, and of course, share the link with your friends and family to a number of interesting and thought-provoking videos that we've done in the past, and of course, more to come in the future. So, of course, the best way to show your appreciation is to, again, subscribe and to share the link. Now, family, usually we cover a number of topics relating to history, culture, Pan-Africanism, and so forth. But this time around, we've decided to take a different route. Today, we'll be focusing on International Climate Day, which was observed on Friday, May 15, 2026. This day is based on the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and has been observed since 1992 to draw attention to global attention to climate change and environmental issues, to global warming and to environmental issues. Now, given the importance of this particular subject, especially when we consider that these extreme weather patterns have a direct impact on multiple areas of human activity, I asked none other than Miss Sheryl Etienne LeBlanc to join us today to share her knowledge and expertise on this particular subject matter. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Sheryl Etienne LeBlanc, right? This is her first time on Unity and Solidarity TV. This has been long in the making. It's been a while since I've been, trying to have her as a guest, but, scheduling matters did not permit. But either which way, we are thankful that Ms. Sheryl accepted our invitation. Please unmute your mic.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. I am
All right.
Sheryl Etienne LeBlanc, a meteorologist at the Meteorological Department, St. Martin. I have been in the field of meteorology for 30 years. And at present, I am a meteorologist / climatologist because my interest is in analyzing climate data and see how it affects humans and how it affects the community. So climate and climate change is my passion. And yes, here I am today to discuss a little about weather, climate, and how it impacts us and the trends that we have been seeing in the recent years on St. Martin in particular.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction. If you could just do me a huge favor and bring your device a little closer so we can hear you a bit clearer, right? If that's possible. Okay.
I hope that's better.
Okay, we'll see. Yeah, so Sheryl, based on your expertise and your knowledge, I asked you to join us to give a presentation, right, on this particular subject matter. So at this particular time, I just ask you to flow into it. Afterwards, of course, if there are any questions from the viewers, we'll gladly take those. If not, I think I can keep you busy with some questions afterwards. And I'm looking forward to a very, very interesting presentation. All right. So without further ado, take it away, Sheryl.
All right. So before we start speaking about climate change, I think let's just get to the basis of how this thing began. We have climate and we have weather. Now, weather is the present state of the atmosphere, what is happening at any particular time and place. Weather is like it's cloudy today, it's hot today, it's windy tonight. This is what weather is. But when we talk about climate, we are talking about a longer term. Most times we use 30 years. It's a 30-year average of what weather is. So for example, climate would be, the type of climate we experience in the Caribbean would be like tropical climate. We have a lot of rainfall and a lot of sunshine. So that makes us tropical. If you are in Alaska, the climate in Alaska would be polar. It's very cold up there. If you are in parts of Africa, you would experience arid climate, meaning that it is very dry, very little rainfall occurs in these areas. So this is the difference between weather and climate. Now, to prep us to the climate change, there is something called the greenhouse effect. And the greenhouse effect is the increasing amount, is that the amount of gases that form a blanket over the atmosphere. So one of the main gases doing this is carbon dioxide. There are other gases. So the gases form a blanket in the atmosphere, and it protects us from the severe heat from the sun. If these gases were not around, we would be freezing cold. But they tend to protect us, and they absorb, the plants and the soil and the ocean absorb the carbon dioxide. And what is happening now, this would be the natural one. But what is happening now is that humans have continued to produce so much of these gases, example, carbon dioxide, that the plants and the soil can't, we are giving them too much work. So they can't keep up with humans and all the excess gases. So the increased level of the greenhouse gases are making the earth warm. And this is what is creating the climate change and the climate variability. So because there is a break in the natural norm, what is supposed to happen, the gases are too much right now. So this is what is causing the climate change or the climate variability that we are experiencing. First one of them is that for 2025, the real-time global greenhouse gases continue to increase. We have seen that over the past years that it has been increasing, and 2025 is no different. It continues to increase. We can see that as the greenhouse gases increases, so does the temperature on Earth. And for 2025, the last report we got from the World Meteorological Organization is that for 2025, temperatures have increased to 1.4 degrees above what it used to be in the pre-industrial ages. That was between 1850 and 1900. So our temperatures for 2025 was 1.4 degrees above that. And that puts 2025 either the second or the third highest. We know that 2024 was extremely hot. 2025 was not as hot as 2024, but it was still hot. So 2024 is the record. It was the record, the highest that the temperatures had ever gotten. But the 2025 was slightly lower, but it was still hot. So in terms of temperature, temperatures continue to rise. In terms of rainfall, what is happening is that rainfall is different across the globe. Rainfall or snow, some places are getting extremely wet, some places are getting extremely dry. So we have droughts happening in parts of the world, whereas we have record floodings occurring across the globe. For another parameter that we look at in terms of climate change is the ocean heat content. The ocean continued to warm in 2025, record high levels. The graph just keeps going exponential. And the 90% of the extra heat that is trapped by the gases goes to the ocean, causing the ocean, and this affects marine life, the different weather patterns, and of course, sea levels are affected by the increase in heat content. The corals in the ocean, they are very sensitive to temperature, so they too are affected, and this causes our fish, our livelihood, our food security. It affects all of that because everything is a cascading effect. One thing affects the other, domino effect. In terms of sea level rise, there are two ways we look at it. We have, as the oceans get warm, as water get warm, it expands. So this causes the sea level to rise. And also, as the oceans get warmer, the glaciers in the polar areas, they are melting. So when they melt, this also causes the sea level to rise. In 2025, the global mean sea level reached a record high. The long-term rate of sea level has more than doubled since the start of satellite records. It went from 2.65 millimeters per year, that was from 1993 to 2011, and presently the latest statistics, which is the average from 2012 to 2025, it has moved up to 4.75, almost 4.8 millimeters per year. So that is the rate at which the sea level is rising. Sea level rise gives cascading effects. People who live along the coast, our ecosystems along the coast, infrastructure, areas suffer from saltwater intrusion. We have risk to population, the health, people are displaced. So we have a lot of cascading effects when it comes to sea level rise. Another effect we see is the ocean acidity. As the ocean absorbs too much carbon dioxide, the acidity of the ocean changes. So the ocean absorbs 29% of the annual carbon dioxide emissions. And this just changes the ocean's acidity. It continues to decrease, so the sea gets more salty, and then the environment, the fisheries, the coral reefs are affected by that. So just the earth getting warm has many, many rippling effects. As I said earlier, the sea ice and the glaciers continue to melt. In the Arctic for 2025, the Antarctica and the Arctic experience below average sea ice extent throughout the year. And the Arctic saw the lowest maximum extent on the records in 2025. The Antarctica is the same. The ice continues to melt all over. So these were the different parameters when you look at it in the wider scope globally. Now, when we get closer and we speak about the Caribbean, for 2025, the report is going to be released tomorrow, about 11. The report on the state of the climate for 2025 for the Latin America and the Caribbean region will be released tomorrow. But from 2024, we had seen that temperatures around the Caribbean rose by 0.9 degrees Celsius compared to the 30-year average of 1991 to 2020. It was 0.9 above that. So 2024 was already a record year for the Caribbean as well. And from the 2024 report, we also saw that sea level was not rising at the same across the region. We saw that for 2024, the Atlantic side was rising faster than the Pacific side of the region. So we'll wait to see tomorrow what the report says. In terms of rainfall, we know we had various areas in the Caribbean that flooded, especially as a result of Hurricane Melissa. in October of 2025, we also had droughts occurring in the Caribbean. So what we see on a global scope, we also see it happening regionally. So now let's go closer to see what is happening in St. Martin. So we took it from the global level, we went down to the regional level, and right here in St. Martin in terms of climate and weather. We have various hazards that we have to look closely at in any particular year. We have to deal every month with some sort of hazard. For example, we have the hurricane season, which is 6 months of the year from June to November. We have the wet season that occurs around June to November, coincides with the hurricane season. We have the dry season, which happens from January to about April, May. And we have what we have now, the heat season. The heat season starts from about, well, before we can see the changes happening. Before it was from June to October. Right now, we see sometimes it starts even earlier as April. April, May is extremely hot. And the different hazards we have to deal with tropical cyclones, we deal with floods, we deal with storm surge, we deal with fire, we deal with bushfires, we deal with excessive heat, we deal with Saharan dust, we have our coral bleaching, we have sargassum to deal with. So it's a lot of hazards, and it takes you through the entire year to deal with all these hazards. Now, our rainfall trend, what we have observed is that for the past 13 to 14 years, rainfall is kind of on a decrease. So we are not having as much rainfall as we used to before. Our dry season, the rainfall is kind of getting drier. And even in the wet season, it is not as wet as it used to be. When we draw a heat map where you see the months with wet and dry, you see a lot of browns on those graphs showing that we are having less rainfall than we are really used to. In terms of the intensity of our rainfall, we tend to see that even if we are having less rainfall, when we do get rainfall, we get a lot of rainfall in a short period of time. We have had instances where we had almost 3 inches of rainfall in a 6-hour period. So you get flash flooding when these things happen. You have a short period of time and you have an enormous amount of rainfall being dumped on your island during that time. So you know what you have to deal with. Your roads, low-lying areas, rock slides, and all of these that we have to deal with. In terms of temperature for 2024, our temperature was a whole degree above what the normal is. So for 2025, it was a bit cooler. We had the temperature were about 0.6 degrees above normal. But for 2024, our temperatures were 1 degree above the normal. So what I'm saying that to say is that what we are hearing on the global scale and the regional scale, we are also seeing small signs occurring on St. Martin. Another observation in terms of temperature is that our nights are becoming warmer. So for the last 14 years, we can see that the temperatures during the nights are warmer than usual. So people expect, if during the day you are hot and when you go to bed at night, it is still hot, this is not healthy mentally. So this is one of the trends that we are looking at. The temperatures at night are becoming warmer on St. Martin. Another observation is that the hot days, during the hot season, June to November, we are seeing that for the past 5 years, normally we have 39 hot days that we have 32 degrees Celsius and above. In a year, we have, on average, it's about 39, 40 days. But for the last 5 years, we have been having hundreds of these days. So for 2024, we had 132 of these days. Last year, 2025, it was a bit cooler, as we all have noticed. So we had about 65 days, but nonetheless, it is above the normal. So for the past few years, the number of hot days per year has been increasing. The time that it occurs remains the same for the past 30 years, meaning August through September, that's the hottest time of the year. But the number of days that we experience has been increasing. For example, there was one year that the entire month of October, 31 days, we had 32 degrees and above for all these days. So this is a crucial thing, and especially when we have to remember the people who do not have access to cooling systems, air conditions, and fans, and people who live in houses that are not well ventilated. So these are some of the effects, the things that we have to look at, because the future predictions are that we might have more of these days. So we have to do things to mitigate and adapt to these type of changes in our climate. So what all of this means for us is that we know what is happening. We are seeing what is happening. The IPCC report confirms that these conditions, this global warming, will alter the intensity and the frequency of rainfalls. Extreme weather events may occur. We may have very cold times and we may have very hot times. We may have heat waves. We may have floods. We may have droughts, wildfires, storms, and hurricanes. So we know what is coming. So we are to prepare ourselves accordingly. There are things that are beyond us that we can't do because most of these gases are being pushed into the atmosphere by the bigger countries, not us, but there are small things that we can do. It's when it's going to affect, it affects everyone, even if we are not the ones doing it. So we are to educate ourselves as to what is happening in the atmosphere and globally and locally, and to prepare ourselves accordingly. What can we do to combat this climate change? Some people may ask, but let me just say some of the things that humans are doing that will contribute to the climate changing is that we continue to burn fossil fuels, we continue to use coal, oil, natural gases for electricity purposes. Our transportation increases. This contributes negatively to the atmosphere. The factories, many factories that we build, releases the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We continue to cut down trees, either to build or to burn wood. So this contributes to additional carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We continue to contribute a lot of waste into our landfills. These add to the greenhouse gases as well. So there are some things that we can do to change the way we look at things. As humans continue to increase the heat trapping gases in the atmosphere faster than how it naturally is removed, this will lead to global warming. And we can either adapt, which means that we can do things, we accept what is happening and we do things to make our lives easier, or we can mitigate by doing things to reduce the causes of climate change. So we could strengthen, because we know that we are going to face intense storms and weather events. We could build our infrastructure better. We could protect our coastal areas. We can improve our early warning systems. We can build, grow climate smart crops for agriculture. We can prepare our emergency plan. It is not something that is done by just governments. It can be done by communities, by homes, by families, small groups. Each group can help to combat this climate change or to make life easier for other people. In terms of mitigating, we can plant trees, we can protect the trees that we have, we can tend to use cleaner transportation. We can walk, we can cycle, we can carpool, we can use more renewable energy instead of the fossil fuel. See how we can use the sunshine that we have, the wind that we have, to make renewable energy instead of using the fossil fuel that we continue to use, which is getting difficult and more expensive to find right now because of wars. We can support environmentally friendly initiatives in our community. Yes, so these are some, there are many that we can do to combat climate change or to play our part. I'm not sure if I can talk about the hurricane season, which is upcoming right now. Should I continue?
Go right
Or we
ahead.
stop here?
Go right
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, because we are talking about hurricanes, we are just weeks away from the beginning of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. And we are also, which clashes, as I previously said, with the heat season. So we know that we are to expect episodes of heat, extreme heat for St. Martin. It normally comes about extreme around July, August, September. And we also experience Saharan dust intrusion during these times, which makes it more humid and more uncomfortable during these times. And as I said, our nights are getting warmer. So we expect warmer nights, especially around August and September. Now, every year we hear predictions for the upcoming hurricane season. The NOAA, which we follow very closely, they will be giving their prediction on Thursday, this coming Thursday. So we do not have NOAA, but we know the Colorado State University has released theirs on the Weather Channel also. On an average year, we get about 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. So the Colorado State University is predicting about 13 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. This is just slightly below the average. And the Weather Channel also, they have 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes, which is very close. So we tend to see that most of them are predicting slightly below average for the 2026 season. And the reason for this is one of the major hurricane and storms influencer is the ENSO, which is El Nino or La Nina. For us in the Caribbean, La Nina gives us an increase in storm conditions, but El Nino makes our Caribbean drier, so it tends to suppress hurricanes formation. And the prediction for this year is that around this month, continuing toward the end of the year, that it is expected that El Nino, a very strong El Nino, will come about. So therefore, this has altered all the predictions. They are going for slightly below normal. But as I say, for predictions, it only takes one storm. Even if the prediction says we are expecting below average this year, we just need one. There are years in the past that have occurred where we had a very below average season and we still got very dangerous storms passing through the Caribbean. We had El Nino years where we had Ivan 2004, I think it was, and we had Hurricane Ivan destroyed Grenada and Jamaica, and that was an El Nino year. So I don't normally look at the predictions, or I don't make the or we should not make the prediction, do our preparation based on the predictions, because in any season we can get affected by a hurricane or a storm. Right now, the Atlantic is warming up. So even if it's an El Nino year, you may get one storm escaping the very high wind shear and then come straight at us, God forbid. But it is still warm out there, so there is still chance for storms to form. Yes, and I had the names for the hurricanes this year. They are Arthur, Bertha, Cristobal, Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaiah, Josephine, Kyle, Leah, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. So these are the names for the 2026. And we should be prepared no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation, Sheryl. I mean, I really appreciated how you were able to present us with the data, to really show on a year-by-year basis that, the situation is becoming more urgent, and I would dare say more extreme, over the years. Something that I like that you mentioned where it pertains to what we can do on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Many persons will say, St. Martin is just a small island. Our contribution towards emissions, greenhouse gases as such, is minimal, yeah. But at the end of the day, the effects is still, right? The effects is still great and dire,
Yes.
especially on small islands,
Smaller islands, yes.
Um, how receptive do you think persons are when it comes to some of the suggestions that you made? Taking the bus and carpooling and looking for more greener solutions. How receptive do you think our people are to those ideas?
I think people don't really think about it too much because our people tend to forget quickly, because every time a strong hurricane comes or we are faced with some extreme conditions, everybody tend to say, oh, first time I see that, never used to rain hard like this, the winds never used to be strong like this. At the time, that's when they feel it. But a few months down and everybody's settled, they don't remember anything again, or they don't think of some people do, but most people don't really think about it. If you tell them they have to take the bus or ride the car, people like their convenience. So they skip that bit unless it becomes extremely urgent and they are really hurting. That's when they think about it.
I hear you. I hear you. And then, because a very good point you brought out was that many persons may not have a cooling system, right?
Yeah.
And I immediately started thinking about persons with perhaps limited financial resources.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what sort of ideas or advice would you give someone who is on a very thin budget, no cooling system? What can they do in order to, mitigate the effects of the heat in their home?
Oh, well, for now, sometimes it's kind of not a, they can't avoid it because of where they live. Most people live in rented apartments, and they are not the one to say what type of roof they have on or how ventilated the place is. So some of them they can't avoid it, but you would have to, if you don't have any fan, any AC, you would have to open up your windows. But I know there are areas where people can hardly get breeze from windows opening. Who I think of is the elderly who are sometimes homebound and they do not have a fan, they do not have air condition. So some people, that's the only thing, so they would have to find a way to get this cooling system because they can change the way their homes are right now. But
Yeah.
people who are thinking of building in the future, they are supposed to think of these things. um, you have to build your house in a way that it is well ventilated, and also at the same time, you have to think of how you build it to withstand the storms and hurricanes, because that is what we are faced with, heat and the hurricanes and storms. Another set of people that we tend to forget is the kids at school. Some schools are not built um, with any kind of ventilation. Because most schools were built long ago for hurricanes, so they do not have a lot of windows or a lot of spaces where breeze can flow through. So also when they have to be out in the heat doing sporting activities and other activities outside. So based on what we have seen happening, uh, there may become a time when schools or Ministry of Education may have to change their scheduling of their sports times when they have the kids out because of the heat. There have been research done across the Caribbean in that regard, where we may have to look at that, where schools have to reschedule because of the heat, or they have to be conscious of the idea that the kids can't be out too long in at certain times. And also construction workers, people who work outdoors. You have employers may have to think of having sheds where they can take a break. Some people want you to work, 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 and don't think that you have to give them a break, provide them with water, things like that. People have to think about as we move along through the years and we see what is happening.
Yes, I like that. And while you are talking, I am just thinking about the awesome and important role public policy plays, right, in the entire scheme of things. Because when you're talking about the building of homes and so forth, I'm thinking about the building codes.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been made to understand that in the past, the building codes were upgraded, but I personally don't know to what extent. You see, so that would be like maybe some homework on my part to find out, because it's very interesting that we always talk about, let's say for example, climate as such, but to actually see it translated into policies and actions and such, I think that's where the real importance will be, and not
Yeah.
just remain in the realm of talk and rhetoric. But
Yeah.
but I think the point you raised about the times that the schools are having sports,
Mhm.
is very interesting, because it might even mean that they might have to rearrange their whole scheduling.
Yeah.
I'm not in education, but I will be very interested to hear, the
What they
response
have to say.
of
I know.
someone.
Yeah. So weather and climate is everyone's business. It affects every single person. And as we see it changing, we have to change our plans, our attitudes, our we have to imagine you are living in the US, you put it on a very stormy day, you set your foot outside, weather matches you back into your home, get a coat, get an umbrella, whatever. You have to do things within your plan to suit what is happening out there. So we too, in our plans as departments, organizations, we have to see how we can help the people that we service to make their lives more comfortable.
Totally agree. And when it comes to let me ask you this, because you presented a lot of information, a lot of data. What would you say to someone who is of the opinion that climate change is a hoax, it's a conspiracy, it's gibberish? What would you say to someone who's of that opinion?
I would say to them, just look at what is happening. The evidence is there. You can see it's not what it used to be before. It's getting hotter. We can feel it right now. Everybody can feel it. During the summertime, it never used to be that hot. I mean, I am not that old, but I know the older folks will tell you, or probably it's not getting hotter, but our environment also has changed. We used to have more trees where we'd get breeze. Now we don't have these. Or our houses are built in such a way that we don't feel cool anymore. But we can feel that it's getting hotter. We can see the increase in hurricanes and storms, the intensity. Even if we are not feeling it right here home, it's happening somewhere in the world. We can see it in the news, and it's happening. And we can tell you the you can see the statistics, what it used to be before and what it is now. I know some people do not like to hear about climate change, but what I say sometimes, it's not always climate change, it is climate variability, because for climate change you need hundreds of years of data to say yes, the climate is changing. But
Good point.
sometimes it can get extreme in different ways. It can get hotter or it can get cooler. And then this year might be a year where it's not so hot, not so cool like 2025 was, but 2024 was. So you will get little drops in years as you go through, but generally it is changing. The climate is changing.
Wow. Okay. And you mentioned a while ago a report. I think it was a 2025 World Meteorological Report. So for those who's interested in doing a bit more reading, I was able to find the link and I posted it
Yeah.
just in case persons want more information. When Sheryl, when you drive around St. Martin, right? Based on all that based on what you know, do you see any progress? Are we as a society making any progress when it comes to our awareness pertaining to climate change? Do you see people making more conscientious decisions? Do you see more organizations focused on, I don't know, recycling or whatever? What are you seeing when you drive through the community?
When I drive through, I'm seeing people are not regarding anything, or nothing is being done, I would say,
Okay.
because in terms of people still building a lot along the coast, we see development happening along the coast with no regard to any sea defenses. And there are areas where studies have shown that by 2050, these places will be almost underwater, and people are building there right now. In areas where you see a lot of flooding occurring, people still building they build flat. The area loves to flood, but nobody's building on pillars in this area. They still build their houses flat. We still add a lot of waste, too much waste to the landfill. So I don't want to say that people are not aware, but the action doesn't speak. And it's at all levels. It's not like for the community. I'm not seeing any drastic changes being done in government policies either. So I'm not seeing any action on the ground right now in St. Martin in terms of climate change. I don't know what you're seeing.
No, what I have seen, I've seen some organizations, and my heart really goes out to them, in a good way, of course. I see organizations with their cleanup campaigns. I see organizations with the recycling efforts and such. I see organizations trying to raise awareness, But I
Yeah.
think just like what you said earlier, um,
So,
we tend to have a very short memory, and
mhm.
we are very let's say spontaneous as a people. So something happened now, it's like, for example, with Hurricane Irma, everyone was a weather expert,
Yep.
right? Everyone knew how how fast it was coming, where the direction. Everyone became an expert. Everyone became an expert on shelters. Everyone became an expert on first aid. Everyone became an expert. Yeah. And then after that, at least I have noticed that that interest was no longer as strong as before. And we
Yeah.
just revert back to our pre-Irma ways, so to
Yeah.
say. Eh,
Next year it's 10 years. 10 years since Irma.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You see, so that's going to be a very interesting indicator to see whether we have truly built back better, right? Or if we still have more to go. But
Yeah.
I think some incremental steps are being made. I see some people are getting into the solar, right? It was so funny because there was a period when we had a constant load shedding.
Oh, yeah.
I think the demand
That
for
was
solar.
2024.
Sorry?
That was 2024 when it was extremely hot.
Okay, good. Well, I know it was like a really big issue. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that the demand for solar power increased during that particular period, because I think people just had enough. They wanted something more reliable, they wanted something cleaner, and they just wanted something that, could be eventually would pay off for itself. Another time I was in a particular store, and I was in the store for about maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I lied to you not, Sheryl. If 10 people came into the store, 7 wanted solar powered devices. I think it was in the same year of 2024. I think I could be mistaken,
Yeah.
but I thought it was very interesting to note. You understand? So I think that there is, more awareness being, it's expanding. And I think once perhaps if the cost of certain renewable, energy products reduce even further, I think we might have a big push. I have a cousin of mine, and he has his entire house is solar, and he
Wow.
always brags and shows off on me. you know, whenever when current go and we in the heat, he's on Facebook showing off. I mean, in a good way, he just, he's a lovable guy. But he always talks about the benefits of solar, always giving ideas and advice and so on how we can make it work for the community, you see? And I
Yeah.
really think eventually we ought to strongly consider going in that direction as a collective, because as you said, the big countries they have all the cards. They are the greatest emitters. They control global supply chains. So we are basically at times at their mercy. But there are still
Yeah.
things we can do within our power. There are still some things that we can do. What do you think?
Well, the interest for renewable sources of energy might spike up again because of the prices of fuel. So we might see people looking for their solars pretty soon again, because the prices, our bills are increasing, and it's getting more difficult day by day. as the war continues in the Middle East. So I think St. Martin is a country where we have a lot of sunshine. So I think we should be making more use of solar energy by now. And if there are incentives given to people um, to help them to purchase those devices, it would be a great thing. And even the company that produces electricity itself could invest in solar, and it would aid them with all of those um, generators that are being purchased to use fossil fuel. An example is I heard that Dominica is now going through geothermal, and they are going to be giving the company that produces electricity some of it. So this will help cut down on the amount of fuel that they use for the generators. So I think St. Martin should make use of the solar because we have a lot of sunlight.
Correct. Correct. And I think I absolutely agree with you. I just simply do not understand at times, I will call it the resistance or people's, hesitation, with regards to adopting, solar or renewable energy, in order to assist the wider community, you
Yeah.
know. Oh, I thought you was going to say something. Yeah,
No.
because even when I look at the other islands, right, I see even St. Kitts, they are making some major investments. I
Yeah.
believe St. Eustatius has a solar farm, right? I believe Anguilla also has one. I could be mistaken, but I know a number of islands, nearby and in the region are seriously considering, right, adopting these strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing I've noticed, we are now in May, from since
Yes.
about April, a lot of the articles relating to climate change, right,
Mm-hmm.
is making the connection with food security,
Of course.
right? I've seen that link constantly, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, right, because there's a push, or rather, there's a professed push to have agriculture boosted on the island and such. But again, if this important aspect of climate change is not incorporated into it, and I mean like really tangible, actionable steps,
Mm-hmm.
I think we would just be setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I don't know if the media house was testing our level of awareness or whatever, but a particular media house, they published an article, right? They published an article about teaching young people how to fish, right? Because it's a viable industry. You work for yourself and so on and so on. And Sheryl, right next to the article, they was talking about the acidification of our waters. Now tell me, next to, listen, I did not have to turn the page, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did not
Next
have
to
to
it.
scroll down. It was next to it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying to myself, but wait a minute, don't they understand there's a correlation between these two,
Yes.
you know? I like how I think it was Mia Motley who said it. We are not a small island developing state. We are a big ocean developing states, right? I love that, right? And of course, we rely on the blue economy,
Mm-hmm.
right? For our fish, for our cruise, and so forth and so on. And if that continues to deteriorate,
Mm-hmm.
that's an additional shock, or rather hit to our economy.
Yeah.
But that's
Because
what people come here for.
yeah, if the oceans are getting warmer, the fish tend to go deeper to get the cooler waters, so they go further away from the fishermen. If it is getting more acidity, then the fish will die. Our corals, which are the homes for the fish, are going to be destroyed as well. So as I was saying, it's a cascading effect. Everything affects the other. So is a domino effect as we pump more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because and again, I am familiar, I think, with the study that you raised about the amount of development happening on the coastline,
Mm-hmm.
you see, on our island. And
Yep.
that's the reason why I said that as long as public policy does not weigh in on these particular matters, right? We'll be
Mm-hmm.
attending all of these great conferences, we'll be reading all this great research and
Mm-hmm.
everything. But when it comes to actually implementing it,
Yeah.
we're going to be between a rock and a hard place. You see,
Yes.
I've seen one case. I can't remember the name of the island, but it's in the far east, in between
Mm-hmm.
the Philippines, in that particular area,
Mm-hmm.
where because of the rising sea level, they had to move their capital,
Yes.
let's say from the south to the central part of the island because of rising sea levels.
There
You
was one of
understand?
them, they had to move everybody from that island, from an island as
Okay,
well,
I know that
bring
one
them
too.
to, yeah, bring them to a different island because that island was being gradually being submerged. So you
Correct.
have to move to higher grounds.
Correct. Correct. And I
Yep.
mean, we saw something similar, but that was after I think it was Dorian that devastated Antigua and Barbuda, especially Barbuda, where
Mm-hmm.
they could not even the amount of damage on Barbuda when they had to evacuate everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm
So
saying to
this,
myself, kid, sorry?
but even now they are developing Barbuda right now. So
Oh,
so when development is taking place, people tend to forget these things,
yeah,
but you can't forget, or else
yeah,
you will be wasting money.
yep. And going through the same headache again.
Same thing every time you have to go through it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. What you said that tomorrow an important document will be published that focuses on the climate.
Yes, so the similar report that you got for the globe for international released by the World Meteorological Organization.
Yes.
Tomorrow they'll be releasing the 2025 report for the Caribbean in terms
Okay.
of the report on climate for 2025. I think it's
Mm,
about 11 a.m. our time. It will be live on YouTube.
okay. Okay. And
So
then tell me something, right? Tell me something. Do you also follow the United Nations Climate Change Conference?
sometimes I do, or I just read the reports that they produce after. Yeah.
Okay, because I've been following it. I mean, I love the discussions, right? I enjoy the debates and everything. I enjoy the information that comes out. And
Mhm.
sometimes I just wish that we would have more discussions like that on our soil. You
Yeah.
understand? And I think the more we talk about it, the more we make it more real, right?
Mhm.
That hopefully it brings about a difference in thinking and approach when it comes to
Awareness.
our role. Yes, correct. I definitely believe so.
Yeah.
Because persons, as far as Borneo and all over the world, they ascend wherever these discussions are. And what I love, some people are so, how you say, they're so true to the particular cause. They don't take any airplane. They don't drive no car. I mean, they're like pure, activists, man. And I mean, I,
Yeah.
I I applaud that. Some people take a
Mhm.
bike and they go from one part of the world and they try to reach this conference. And I mean, that's inspiring. Whereas some of us wouldn't even catch a bus to go to town.
Oh, no, no. I was just about to say that.
It's amazing, but I
Yeah.
I I, I truly I would truly encourage everyone to get their hands on this particular report, right? Of course, to pay attention to all of the information coming out, and then just based on where you are, see what actions you can implement.
Yes.
Of course, there are short-term actions, there are long-term actions, but we have to find our place within the scheme of things and not always just be reactive in my humble opinion, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, Sheryl, I want to thank you for your time and your patience, and most of all for the information that you shared. Um, would you like to, share some parting words before we close off?
Finally, as we just said, as a summary, we are aware that temperature is rising on Earth. This can contribute to extreme weather events that will affect us. If it doesn't affect us, it will affect our neighbors or somebody we know, somebody in some country that we know. The little that we can do, whether it is conserving on the electricity that we use, using less waste, sending less waste to the landfill, and conserving our water, whatever little that we can do can play a part in the common goal. What we can do to adapt at our homes for our families. If you know somebody who doesn't know about it, you can have a discussion, try to share the knowledge, and never block yourself. Try to listen to discussions on the topic so you can be aware and that you'll be able to make better decisions. So I just want everybody to be safe the upcoming hurricane season. Prepare yourself. Don't wait for the last minute. We know in St. Martin, the peak of the season is around September, late August, September. But don't wait for that time to make your preparations for you and your family. Start early and be safe. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And by the way, Sheryl, I think I want to already book you in advance for us to have a discussion about the upcoming climate change conference. I'm seeing here it's scheduled from November 9th to 20th. So we need to have a discussion to just dissect and bounce ideas and observations with regards to this particular conference. As I said, I think the more we talk about it, the more we lend our voices to people who are already talking about it. Because I'm not under the impression that this conversation started with us. I think, yeah, I'm not one of those people to think that way. I just want to support, those voices who have already been, talking about this important topic for a very long time. But I do want us to have a follow-up later down this year, God's willing, so that we can discuss, the proceedings of this very important global event, because we know on that level, policies and ideas just trickle down to the small islands, you see. So again, we cannot be reactive. We all have to do our particular part. So with that said, Sheryl, I want to thank you so much for your time again, for your patience, making yourself available, to this platform and to the public. And of course, to our viewers, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We do hope that you enjoyed this particular segment and that it would have inspired you to do some further digging as to how you can, make the information more real to your day-to-day reality. So from all of us here at Unity and Solidarity TV, I leave you in the words of our prophet, priest, and king, the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Up, ye mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. One God, one aim, one destiny. Take care, one love. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.